Hello, Mr. Sajedi.
Good morning, Mr. Gabel.
Today, we start a series of interviews on Aleksandr Dugin and his role in Russia, but as well internationally in the field of ideology and maybe warfare as well.
Yes.
So today, I'd like to only focus on some basic information on Mr. Dugin. Tell us, who is Mr. Dugin?
First of all, I don't know why each time that I'm going to talk about the Russian policy and politics, I remember a very famous quote from Charles Baudelaire that he says that the devil's greatest trick is to convince you that he doesn't exist. And keeping this in mind, this quote, I am going to another quote from Mr. Putin in one of his famous statements that he said that it's impossible to imagine a world without Russia. And I think that it's correct. I am personally 100% agree with this quote, but just I have to let you know that he is trying to modulate and bug an error message in his quote, because really the Russia and its contribution in the civilization is undeniable, is very, very great contribution, and the world really is impossible to imagine without Russia. But the point is that the Russia is not equal to Mr. Putin, and and a world without Mr. Putin, I think, is more beautiful and more safe world. That's
how's that? How comes that?
Yeah, that is my point. That actually, because when I said about Mr. Putin, I don't just him personally, but the politics and the policies that is carrying out by his team, and one of them is Mr. Dugin. Mr. Dugin is an known as the second brain of the Mr. Putin. Maybe you have ever heard that he arranges everything and he provides theoretical paradigms for the Russian policies since beginning of the third millennium.
How can we be sure about that? I hear a lot of people or read a lot of people who deny this role of Dugin.
I have explained once, but I will explain once again during this interview and maybe the other opportunities that Mr. Dugin has written few books, and all of his books, as are claimed, is an mandatory mandatory university lessons and courses for all the people who are going to pass the foreign policy and military courses in Russia. So we can assume that at least since 20 years ago, there is a generation made that are trained, their mind are trained by Dugin's teachers. And also we can see the reflection in the during the Russian policies. We had also before some expansionism of Russian policies, but now it's very, very serious, and it's bringing the world in a very dangerous phase. So we can see the outcomes of the Dugin's thinking and ideas in the Russian foreign policy and Russian international politics also.
So you mentioned one aspect, which is expansionism, which is fed by Dugin's theories. Is that what you say?
Yes, but I need time, and I have to go to details to live and to introduce some examples, some objective examples to see that really the Dugin's influence in the Russian policy is undeniable. And at least in relation with my country, I mean Iran, I can provide you more details. And when I compare with the other countries, I see that the same policies are implemented, and it means that they are formulated and they are theorized in just one center, in one culture, and in one university, for example. I mean, not just one university. I mean that one school of thought, and that's why the role of Mr. Dugin is undeniable. And also you can see his dialogues with the other philosophers, that they also fear and some danger from his thinkings, and they warn about the dangerous points of view of the Mr. Dugin's. Mr. Dugin has described as an most significant influence over the Russian policy, and especially President Putin. Just I have to give you some important fact that I think that Mr. Dugin was fired from the University of Moscow because of the terrorizing of the Ukraine war in and violence in 2014, I think, 10 years ago. So it's almost undeniable the role of the Mr. Putin in Russian policy and the
Dugin.
Yes, Mr. Dugin and current, and especially the current Russian policy. He was a figure that first try to establish a national Bolshevism party, and national Bolshevist party was just a Bolshevism without a communism idea. And also later he made another party, maybe you've ever heard Eurasia party. In Eurasia party he has formulated a neo-Eurasianism, which theorize the violence and war for expansion of the Russia. We know that the Russia was always in expansionism towards its neighbors, and now Mr. Dugin has theorized and make a new theory named neo-Eurasianism to bring the lost Soviet republics back together with some parts of Europe. And this is very dangerous idea, but is ongoing at this time, is ongoing, and we can give you some examples if you want.
Later, yes. Let's see. So we have been you have been telling about his role in Russian politics. We will dive into the depth of these aspects in our next interview. So in order to understand what you're going to say later in the interview, when we're going to dive deeper, we should know the relation of Russia and Iran, because there's a historic relationship between the two countries. How would you describe this relation between Russia and Russian politics and Iran and Iranian politics and ideology mainly?
Yes, Iranian-Russia politics, I think, begins since 300 years ago, during the time of the Peter, by the Russians, Peter the Great, when the Safavids, maybe you know, that was felt at the same day or at the same week of falling of capital Isfahan. Then was Isfahan the capital. The Peter delegated some his army, his new army, and if you know the history of Russia, then the Peter was in fight with Sweden, and the fight was not finalized. But because of the policies of the Safavid, some parts of Iran they were not satisfied, and the Christian provinces of Iran in north, then was Georgia and I think Armenia. They invited Peter to came to Iran, and because they said that now the dynasty is very weak and it's a good time. So he delegated his army, and he can occupy very big part north of Iran. But later, after 10 years, another Iranian king, Nader, is very famous also. He defeated them, and he could get back the occupied territories. This was not very good beginning of relation between Iran and Russia. Of course, there were always a commercial relation between citizens of two countries, but two governments was not were always or in a war or in an unequal relationship. I don't give all the I mean that I don't consider that I don't give the guilt totally to the Russia, because I see that in Iran also the religious scholars they taught like Russia, because you know that after then was another war between Iran and Russia during the Aleksandr, I think, and then about 40% of the soil and waters of Iran was because Iran lost the war. Of course, it was two sets of the war, two series of the war with 10 years in between. The second series was begun with an religious scholar fatwa, and they began a war. The government by itself didn't want to have a war, but they invited the people to attack to Russia, and that's why Iran was in a weak position because the second war was begun by Iran by itself. And we signed two treaties, Golestan treaties and Turkmenchai treaties, and by these two treaties we lost more than 40% of the soil and water, and plus historical frustration that always is with us. And what I can see as result of this war was that for Russia was preventing Iran's to have modernity was very crucial, very important, because if you know the Catherine 20 years before the war, she was an Austrian princess, and she renewed the army of the Russia. And when the war outbreak between Iran and Russia, the army of Iran was very old, without any modern weapons. Yes. That's why Iran asked help from France and Austria to renew the army, and it was not good for the Russia. And always, and the relation between Iran and Russia was Iran's trying to access to modernity, and Russia's policy to prevent Iran access to modernity, because and modern society is equal to a modern army also, and this was not good for Russia. And Russia has a very good, very loyal ally in this, and it was the Iranian scholar, the Shia scholarship, that also if Iran would have access to modernity, they would lose their control over the people, the Iranian citizens. That's why we can recognize an cooperation between the Shiite scholarship and Russia authorities. Till today, this cooperation was honestly continued, and the biggest victim of this cooperation was Iranian people and Iranian benefits and interests.
Lovely. I think for an introduction, this will do. We will focus in our next interview more to the depths of the ideologies of Aleksandr Dugin and some ideologues in Iran, and see how there is a relationship and what exactly the dangers are that you mentioned before. Thank you, Mr. Sajedi.
Thank you.